Hi guys, welcome back. I have a little special one for you today. This is Forever Day by Hans Brunner. Forever Day is the memoir of one man's life journey from growing up in Switzerland in the 70s, driving around in a VW bus to see bands play, to heading out into the world on an adventure and meeting the love of his life before settling in Australia. It's the story of a search for the people and places where we belong, the migrant experience, and the small adventures that make up a life. Brunner has self-published this memoir, but he's also the author of several award-winning YA and kids books, and was publishing manager at USA Today, and has written several books on antique hand tools, which I mentioned because a member of my family got vaguely into collecting these tools at one point, and I remember a couple of these books sitting on their shelf. So that was kind of a full circle moment for me. The author reached out to me because his daughter Denise watches this channel. So, hi Denise, how are you? Hope you're having a good day. I love a good memoir. I think I just find people very interesting, and the choices people make, the things they live through, how life is lived in different time periods. All of that fascinates me. With biographies, we get the story of great, big, unusual lives, fame and fortune. But Australia also has a tradition of storytelling that's closer to home and closer to its roots. Books like A Fortunate Life by Albert Facey tell stories of ordinary people living on the ground floor of life, tossed around by larger events and enduring the everyman's path while being a witness to history. I loved A Fortunate Life, and okay, I'm not comparing this book to like that class. It's a total classic of Australian literature, but I think it's something in my upbringing that makes me love to hear people's stories and just a good yarn. Hans Brunner's style is casual, friendly, natural. It reads like you're sitting with an old friend of the family, being told old stories. He has a playful outlook, open mind, and an adventurous personality, which makes his life adventures more amusing and interesting. I think he's a child of the 60s approximately. He has an egalitarian outlook on sex and drug use, which show up in the story a few times more in the younger years of his life. He also speaks really respectfully about the women in his life, especially his wife. Actually, one of my favorite parts of the story is his wife, Janine. He sees her on board a migrant vessel heading for Australia, which is her home, and that's it. He's smitten, and they're together to this day. He doesn't overshare about her personal life, which feels respectful, but it reminds me a lot of, a lot of real life stories of true love. Maybe not a lot of big flowery stuff is said or sort of dramatic gestures and stuff. There's not a lot of drama, but there's a look from across a room, and then that's it. Then a sort of quiet, steady, lifelong bond, which becomes a through line, an anchor, a core motivation or influence on our storyteller. Also, at one point, he mentioned she collected My Little Ponies at one point in life. So she's good people, right? Because I collect My Little Ponies too. At times, I think I would have liked a little bit more about her and their children. But I do think because, they're real people and people that know them are going to read this book, it makes sense not to share like their own private lives. You know what I mean? The title Forever Day comes from the author's childhood notion that some perfect day in our life, like a perfect moment, would be the thing that, we look back on when we die, and then that becomes our personal heaven. Like that's our forever day, the day we live, we're forever in that moment, kind of caught in that moment. In some ways, this is a theme, like this is the dream that he chases through his life, this space of deep peace and belonging. And I think that's a really nice idea. I like that. I think that's lovely. I enjoyed going on this journey, meeting this cast of colorful characters and all the funny things he gets up to along the way. He's had quite a colorful life. He grows up in a pub in Switzerland. He also opens a chicken shop in Australia at one point with a famous spice mix. And he may have engaged in some money laundering for some Hungarian businessmen, allegedly. And he also wangled himself a job at USA Today while living in Europe at one point. While he does say that some of the events and names are changed or it's sort of, exaggerated a little to tell a story, which is how you can tell an entertaining yarn, really, in my opinion. It's really nice to spend time in his company as he grows through life and goes on, his adventures, eventually landing on his dealing in antique tools. But always, whatever else is happening in his life, he is always writing. He's a writer. I like this book. It reads as quite professionally written while also being down to earth and accessible. And I liked hearing about the story of Brunner's life. I did feel like the ending didn't flow to a natural stop. It was just a little bit abrupt. But otherwise, it's pretty solidly written book. Normally, as I'm reviewing, I think about if a book is for a specific target audience and, you know, if so, like, will they like it? Or if it might please a general audience. I think if you've read his other works, maybe, or if you're looking for stories of Australian lives or the migrant experience, then you might like this. Perhaps readers, you know, from the same era will be drawn to this, or people who like memoirs. You know, maybe it's for people like me who are just nosy about other people's life stories. If you think it sounds appealing, get yourself a copy. You can find it on Amazon, wherever you are. But yeah, I just enjoyed it. It's just a nice memoir. It's a nice person to spend time with, and it's an interesting life. So if that appeals to you, take a look, check it out. Yeah, you know, usually I end with, like, if you should read this book, read it if you've ever wondered what the secret spices are that make your local chicken shop fare so delicious, or if you've ever moved to a foreign country and found yourself with one foot in two worlds. So thank you to the author who sent me this copy for review. As always, you know, all the opinions are my own honest thoughts. Yeah, I love Australian stories, obviously, because that's where I am from. And I do think that I find often with New World countries like Canada, Australia, and I can think of a few others, you know, people often say, like, oh, we don't have a literary history. And then you scratch the surface and there's loads of history in the New World. So, yeah, if you are from any of these places, and if you're from a New World country, you will know, or even if you're not from there and you're interested, definitely dig into your own literary history of where you're from. It's often a lot richer and more interesting than you would think. And I think there's a bit of a trend at the moment away from history. I think that's a bit misguided. You can learn a lot from the history of your own country and also from the literary history of your own country. So that's my advice to you for today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining me. And I hope you guys have a great day, whatever you're up to today. I hope it's a good one for you. And I'll see you in the next one.